Welcome back to the Daily Rundown with me, Dan Morfitt, and my guests, Madie Howard and John Cooper. Our next story is about Her Madge. The Queen has been filmed saying Chinese officials were very rude during last year's state visit by President Xi Jinping. She was discussing their treatment of Britain's ambassador to China with a senior police officer at a Buckingham Palace garden party on Tuesday. This comes after David Cameron was overheard saying Afghanistan and Nigeria were fantastically corrupt. Whether he means that's a good or a bad thing, we're still not quite sure. Now, Buckingham Palace said that the Chinese visit had been extremely successful, but the Queen hasn't said anything else on the subject. So is this a nice show of reality from royal quarters? Or are we starting the insults now, before the Olympics? Are we getting these insults in first, John?
It's tame by comparison, isn't it? You know,
I think Prince Philip's probably said worse.
Prince Philip has said worse. Prince Philip said considerably worse. So, like, you know, this is a kind of a thing where it's kind of, well, I mean, come on, how old's the Queen now? She's in her 90s now.
Yeah, she's having a big part, isn't she, with Anton Deck on Saturday?
Yeah, she's not exactly on the cultural button she's from a different time, and even though yes she has to keep on top of stuff, she has to keep kind of ahead of the media kind of thing, but she's in her 90s.
She's our sovereign. She has to be ahead of us, surely.
She could say something really fruity and I'd let her off, because it's the Queen. Thinking
about it though, you know, with an economic head-on, we've just signed a lot of trade deals with the Chinese. Yeah. They're investing a lot of money in the UK, in our infrastructure. Yeah. We're borrowing a lot of cash off the Chinese. For the Queen, who is regarded as the top royal on the planet, to say they're very rude could lose us money, could lose us jobs.
It could, but it probably won't, I don't think. That's my opinion.
Madie, do you think Prince Charles should come out and say a grovelling apology, or maybe giving them some Dutchy biscuits for free? I don't know.
Did either of you watch the clip? Have you seen it?
No.
I looked at the photograph, but I didn't see the clip.
See, I watched the video and it's really tame. It's just the media getting really excited.
Yeah. Is it us getting excited about this?
Yeah, it's kind of just like a non-story in the sense that it's just a buzzy headline. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, the Queen said something slightly bad, but what she was really doing was empathising with someone who was telling her that someone was rude to her. So when it's in context, it really is just the Queen saying, oh, I heard about that, yeah, very rude. I think that's literally word for word what she said. It wasn't a sort of classic xenophobic remark from other figures. It wasn't anything like that at all. So if anything terrible came of it, it would just be blown out of proportion.
So are you saying that in fact we're blowing this out of proportion?
We're discussing it and that's fine. I think it shows how sort of little power she has. Like, you wouldn't expect this to have come out in the sense that it's really putting the Queen in a bad light, but the media just have the power to do that.
Yeah,
and isn't that something to think about? You know?
It's, if someone's rude, now that I'm glad you watched and put in context, because if someone was rude to you and you said, I'm sorry, that's very rude, you're perfectly within your rights to say that, aren't you?
But, you know, I've got to keep some impartiality here. The Queen's surely got to be impeccable, almost immaculate. She's God's anointed on this planet. She's our reigning monarch for a reason. She's got to keep politically balanced. She can't call out anybody.
It's not like she's called upon history and said, oh, so rude, I'll have the heads on sticks, or anything like that. It's just said, you know, it's a bit rude. I think it's okay.
It's almost as if she's just another human being.
What? No, the Queen cannot be just another human being.
What she said, and she's not just another human being, another human being in their 90s. You know, with an incredibly a tough bloody job to do. In, you know, how many we've got to fly around the world and you've got to meet all these people every day, all day, when you're in your 90s and you're quite frail now. So we're just going to like wheel you around and do all this stuff.
I don't know if I'm particularly sympathetic. I think it'd be worse to be in a terribly run-down nursing home that's understaffed.
Yeah, okay, fair dues.
Things like that. Yeah. But I do see what you're saying. I guess
she sort of is in a nursing home.
Arguably, her job is hard. Maybe.
Hasn't she? She's got carers at her beck and call.
Yes.
I doubt she has a big red button or a red cord to pull. I think she probably has a little bell.
Yeah. Oh no. Obviously the queen. She's the queen. She's got the absolute lap of luxury. But you know, is there that thing? If you want to play devil's advocate on it, where do you think there's ever a time when it's just crossed her mind to go, I just don't want to do this now. I'm done. Being the queen for ages and I'm done. I just want to sit in my pyjamas all day and eat beans. You know.
And on that, I'm going to leave that as an image. The Queen sat in a nightie.
Just baked beans, lunch beans on toast. That's all I want.
57 varieties, I love it.
Right, our next story is to do with Sky TV presenter. Eamon Holmes has apologised after he appeared to link an attack on Manchester United's team bus with the Hillsborough disaster. Talking on Sky News, the openly Man United supporting presenter said, "This is going back to the 70s and 80s. Everything that you were seeing that was bad about Hillsborough, for instance." This is in relation to the violence before the last game at West Ham's Upton Park. Barry Devonside, who lost his son Christopher at Hillsborough, said Mr Holmes should have known better. Eamon Holmes later tweeted that there was no comparison between the events. He says last night was hooliganism. There was no hooliganism at Hillsborough. He continued, "I was trying to talk about images we never want to see again. If anyone concluded anything different, accept my humblest and most honest apologies." So, was this just a gaffe? Or another example of the story some of the media tried to portray for 27 years? Madie, is this the media just being a bit, ooh, again? Or is this serious?
No, it's Eamon Holmes being a bit, ooh, again.
Eamon Holmes.
He says terrible things quite often. And I don't know why he would say that. I think it's very evident from what he said that it could be misconstrued and that you would get in trouble for it. And I just don't understand why people say these things and then apologise. Commit. Say it or don't. You know what the subtext is because you tweeted it.
Well, he said it first and then did the apology on Twitter, which seems to be the thing nowadays. Thankfully, we don't let these things rumble on for weeks and weeks. They seem to all be done in an hour or so. And Eamon Holmes is a far better television presenter than I am.
Could it be that he's a little bit lost in showbiz?
Dan, don't put yourself down.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, don't put yourself down. Do you think he's a bit lost in showbiz? Because that can happen. Where it's kind of like you know, it's kind of like, oh, I need to fill 10 seconds worth of stuff, and I need to keep going. Then whoops, I said a thing.
But to be lost in showbiz when you're presenting a news programme on Sky News,
yes,
and you're talking about the nasty looking events last night where the Manchester United bus was pelted with bottles by West Ham fans, just before their last home game, which they won 3-2. To say it's hooliganism and to say even the words Hillsborough after we've had the unlawful killing judgments, we've had testimony that says they weren't drunk, it was never any of the Liverpool supporters' faults. We've had that all now in an inquest that's lasted longer than any in British judicial history.
Right.
For him to say this is more than a gaffe, surely.
Definitely, it's attention seeking.
Attention seeking on his part?
Oh, completely. He's very much an attention seeker.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
If you look at past things that he said, and why else would you say that? And to be honest, it's quite sickening. It does actually have a reaction in me. Like, people died, human beings died. Not to further your publicity, man, you know. And he won't be held accountable for it because certain people, like middle-aged white men, aren't held accountable for the things they do in the same way that other people would be.
Is it part of the media story as well that for 27 years, a lot of media outlets lied about Hillsborough?
Completely.
They towed the party line, they towed the police line, they towed the government line, and now that's all been proven to be false. Do you think he's just hanging on to those old things he was probably told by editors, people that he worked with, maybe even proprietors, because ultimately Sky News is owned by the same people that owned The Sun and The Times?
I was thinking that. It does reinforce those kind of ideologies, and he was around at the time and in the media, so maybe he does have that sort of still there. Obviously that's a judgment I can't make, but it would be logical.
I would say that Maddie's hit it on the head in terms of the attention-seeking thing, where it's kind of like, because you've obviously done your research quite a lot in terms of the details of this, and I was only kind of vaguely aware of it, but if you have to keep yourself abreast of the knowledge all day, every day, you're going to fall flat on your face at some point every now and then. But it does seem that, from what I've seen of Eamon Holmes, he does it on a slightly more regular basis than most.
So do you think it is... The one thing a journalist should never do is become part of a story.
Yeah.
But him and maybe a few other journalists recently in the public eye, in that top tier of journalism, seem to be regularly becoming part of the story. I could even mention Christian Guru Murthy from Channel 4, who often asks antagonistic questions, just for a good bit of viral
in order
video.
to kind of make it look good. It's kind of I want to get this to make it really meaty, so I'm going to kind of ask something that I wouldn't normally ask, just to see if I can incite something. And it's is it that, or is it just attention-seeking stupidity?
Yeah, and it really shouldn't be. And you'd hope that there wouldn't be that attention-seeking stupidity, but we are only now starting to get justice for the 96 after 27 years. And also today's the 31st anniversary of the Bradford fire disaster, when 56 people died in Bradford, and around 40 people were also injured by that fire. So he's picked a day of all days to do that. Right, it's time for another break now. So go to the smallest room in the house, or maybe send that text that you've been wanting to do for ages, and we'll see you again in a couple of minutes' time with news of new planets and new emojis, science and stuff.